marketing viewers. Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. So, as people are joining, I'm just going to give an overview. We're going to be talking about trauma during the holidays. And we have two counselors in our office here. We have Ms. Dawn Bouillon and Mr. Dudley Bienvenu. We will give a little introduction of everyone. I'm Rachel, by the way. Y'all have probably seen me up front if you've been here. I'm one of the two receptionists.
She doubles as psychologist to the counselors, and she's also in training to become a counselor. She's phenomenal.
She's wonderful.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. So would y'all want to introduce yourselves? Miss Dawn, you can start first.
Yeah, my name is Dawn Bouillon. I have a master's in management family therapy, and I'm a licensed professional counselor as of just recently.
Yeah.
Just made that accomplishment.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
But you've been doing this for like 20 years, right?
Yes, slightly. I enjoy working with women, specifically working through trauma, just kind of helping them find themselves, understand themselves in the context of their story, and just creating a safe space for them to heal. So
That's great.
yeah.
And we're thrilled to have her. You've been here 2.5 years?
I think so.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's been a great asset to our staff. Of course, we have a total of 5 counselors here, and all of us, I think, do work with trauma, including me. My specialty is I've been doing this for 40 years, and I would say my 3 specialties are individual psychoanalytic psychotherapy. So I work with a lot of things, deep-rooted things, and help people try to understand why they do what they do, and do intensives, do 3-day intensives and intensive work with people over a long period of time. But I do all kinds of other counseling as well. My 2 other specialties would be marriage counseling and addiction, in addition to trauma, grief, and loss, I would say.
Okay. And I did just want to pop in. I know that some people who are watching, if they're on their phones, just rotate your phone sideways to a landscape view so that you can see it. For y'all to be able to see both the counselors, we do have to have it sideways instead of vertically. So if you're able to do that, that would be great. Since we are not able to have it in a regular phone position at this point.
Okay.
But if we are able to eventually in the live, we'll
figure it out. This is our first one of these of hopefully many.
Yes. Yes. All right. So with that introduction, let's start. We can first start off with the most basic question to get us started. What is trauma? How do y'all define it? What is the basic viewpoint of what trauma is?
Well, I would say that a trauma is just a deeply disturbing, emotional, it's a deeply disturbing or distressing experience. Okay. It could be physical, emotional, or mental. And it can be very intense to moderately or mildly intense.
Okay, so I think my understanding of trauma is it's not necessarily the experience, right? It's not the thing that happened. It's what happened inside of you. So it's the actual wound.
In response to what happened.
Yes, it's the wound in response to what happened. So it's not necessarily the abuse. It's not necessarily the the abuse, the neglect, or the event that happened, kind of the big thing that happened. And that's actually good news because we can't change what happened, right? The trauma is actually the wound, and wounds can be healed at any time.
Wound is what is left behind.
Yes, the wound is kind of the impact on your body, right? Body, soul, spirit, emotionally, physically, in all the kind of ways. So the trauma is actually the wound, and it is what has the impact on you in the present today.
Yeah.
Which is
What
why
you
we're,
carry
why
with
we're
you,
talking about this.
It could happen as a child, and you carry it into adulthood and into your marriage.
Yes.
Which is something we see all the time.
Right, because we actually hold the trauma in our body, and our body remembers everything.
And the thing I want to say too is it's a, you know, a traumatic event would be like something that we all know what a traumatic event is. I use the 3 A's: adultery, addiction, and abuse. Those are all traumatic. There can be catastrophic events: grief and loss, death, illness, loss of a job, loss of a friend. There's all kinds of things that are that can be potentially traumatic, even though everybody experiences them differently. Or, you know, we're talking about the holidays, like things that happened at during the holidays are gonna probably come up. These holidays, you tend to remember them, especially if it's an anniversary date type of thing. But all of those things happen to normal people, and if you have a reaction to it, it's normal to feel traumatized by those events. Like a very normal person can have a horrible response to an abnormal set of events. It doesn't mean you're messed up. It means that what happened to you was messed up and it wounded you.
Right. And trauma is also not just the bad things, right? It's not just all the bad things that happen. It's the good things that didn't happen, right? It's when your needs go unmet, right? Your very important
Like being
needs.
neglected.
Yes, absolutely. You know, not being loved unconditionally, having to work for love and acceptance. So it's not just the really bad things that we kind of think about when we think of traumatizing situations. It's the things that you don't get can
It's the
be
things you were
equally
supposed to get
as
that were
damaging.
missing.
Yes, absolutely.
And then you end up going into adulthood looking to
Yes.
get those things, and then that can create a whole new set of problems.
Right, which actually, the way that I kind of understand that, with trauma being the wound, right, is that wound kind of represents that hole in our soul, which can sound like, I'm not enough, you know, I'm not good enough, just being me. I don't matter. I'm not important.
And those all are self-esteem affecting things. When you talk about low self-esteem, those affect the way you view yourself.
Absolutely.
And if you view yourself in that light, you will react a lot of times in unhealthy ways and end up with people that end up, you let do those things to you and you don't set healthy boundaries with,
Absolutely.
which is part of what happens at Christmas.
That's exactly what happens at Christmas.
And holidays.
Which is why we're talking about
Yeah.
it, because these are the wounds that get tapped into,
Yeah.
right? Because we are going to be with the people. A lot of us are going to be with the family members in the same homes, around the same smells, with the same food, with the same, you know, and our body remembers all of those things.
And I think that kind of goes into with what the next question is what exactly is a trigger?
Okay.
You know, like, you know you get triggered and it's a part of trauma, but what is it?
So you just said it, and I was thinking of, okay, you got the 5 senses. So you got your eyes that can see things, your ears have heard things, you've smelled things, you taste things, and you touch things. So anything that you see, hear, taste, touch, smell, you could be walking along in a store and somebody happens to be making an apple pie, and your brain can literally associate that memory with your grandmother's apple pie that she used to make every holiday season, and it might evoke good memories or it could evoke bad memories. I heard a story, I was reading a great book, which is a phenomenal book, by the way, written by Oprah Winfrey and a neuropsychologist that is called What Happened to You, rather than What's Wrong with You. It says What Happened to You, and it's a phenomenal book because they've had a relationship for 35 years, and there was this one case of this child that was having trouble in a class with a particular teacher, major behavior disorder, and the psychiatrist, who was also talking in the book, because I listen to my audiobooks, figured out through talking to this young man that the reason he was reacting negatively to this teacher was because of the cologne that the teacher wore. It was a form of Old Spice, and it was the same Old Spice that one of his abusive dads in one of the many foster homes, with some of the worst abuse he ever experienced, that particular man that inflicted that abuse wore that cologne. So once they figured that out, that was an easy fix.
Yeah.
And then their relationship improved. So they gave the guy some, the teacher some things to do to give the guy some positive attention. And once the young man understood that, he started thinking of the guy in a different light. He didn't have to smell that all the time.
Right.
So and then there's the feelings. There's all the stuff that goes on in your body.
Absolutely. Yeah. So your body remembers things that you may not actually remember, and your body responds way before we catch up, kind of in our brain.
Yeah. So this is another thing. So we all, like especially Christians and a lot of other people, cognitive behavioral therapists, think that the way you think affects the way you feel. And I think we would all agree that's true. But the brain is actually formed where the amygdala is the reptilian brain. It forms first, and then the cerebral cortex develops around it. And that happens between age 1 and 4. And this is the part of the brain that makes sense of everything.
Right.
That thinks. This is the part of the brain that reacts. So this part of the brain holds a lot of the trauma, because a lot of the trauma happens when you're a kid, growing up, and very early. And so if the brain perceives a threat, to your body or to your being, and you may not even know what the threat is consciously, it will blow the cerebral cortex, like it'll blow the lid off, and it will react instinctively by what we commonly refer to as the flight response. Fight, flight. It's actually fight, flight, or freeze response.
Yes.
And so that's something, if the brain perceives a threat or that it's unsafe, that's a trigger. And so sometimes you can identify what does that to you, and it's important. That's, I think, the next question, right?
Yes, it is.
Well, what else do you
Well,
want
I
to say
just
about
wanted
that?
to say I'm laughing at that because I just taught that to my kids.
Yeah.
About when you're, when you get triggered and you flip your lid, right?
Right, that's exactly a great
flip your
expression.
lid, because we're trying to
You blow
kinda
your
help
lid.
each other understand each other in our home, right? Like when your lid is flipped, you're gonna have to remove yourself and kind of gather yourself, and just seeing and noticing when someone's lid is flipped, can be helpful, because they're not going to be able to reason with you. They're at that point, they're in survival mode,
So you're a mom, and you can help them see it.
Yes.
And if you're a partner who's got a willing partner, you can learn what each other's triggers are and help them to regulate one another. But one of the things we want to address for those that are listening is you've got to recognize when you're being triggered and how to regulate yourself, which I think goes
And
into
that is the next question, is how do you know you're getting triggered? What do you possibly feel? What does your body feel? Sensations?
So we went over this the other day. So I asked Rachel and Dawn, and I asked myself, like, what do you experience in your body? Because I have this 4 steps that you need to notice. Number 1, you need to notice what's going on in your body, a sensation. Usually a trigger first presents as a sensation. Secondly, you try to name it. What's the feeling? And then what is the need that's not getting met? because Dawn brought that up earlier. And then if you can do that, then you can have a choice. So let's go back through it. So what typically lets you know that you're being triggered? I'm going to ask y'all two both, and then I'm going to answer.
Oh, I just experienced it a few minutes ago.
I caused it. Right?
Yes, you did.
I did that on purpose.
Oh, I was like, whoa, this is exactly what we're talking about
It's
today.
a show and tell.
I guess elevated heart rate. I'm sure my blood pressure was a little impacted. I think just.
So what did I do to cause you to feel? What did I do to cause that?
Do you want me to say that? I'm kidding.
No, seriously, no. What did I do? Think about it.
You tapped in to one of my wounds.
And what was I doing? Because I know I was purposely doing something.
You were.
You don't have to remember the specifics, but in general, what was I doing?
You were telling me what I think and what I feel.
And I was drilling you.
And
I was just
you were
on you, like telling you what to think, what to feel. No, that's not right. Then taking issue with everything you were saying.
You were.
Like taking the opposing side. And what did you start feeling?
Oh, very
sensation.
Yeah, a lot
Describe
of
the sensation,
just
not the
like
feeling.
Tightness in my chest, almost like I can't breathe a little
Yeah.
bit. Kind of holding my breath, and
You were backing away.
oh yeah.
You were moving away from me.
So I don't go.
No, you were moving away.
And a lot of that's unconscious too. You don't realize.
You don't realize you're
or
doing it when
feeling
it's happening. Like you don't realize
Remove
it.
yourself from that.
So that's like your primary one in your stomach, in your.
Oh yeah, I do feel that in my stomach.
What about you?
I have a lot of different ones depending on.
Are we
the
getting
situation.
fireworks?
We did get some fireworks.
Somebody was like, yes.
That's an hallelujah or an amen in church.
I do think that depending on the situation, just because they can come out in different ways depending on if it's more of a depressing feeling or more anxious ridden feeling,
Right.
stimulating versus not. A lot of times my stomach hurts, it starts to hurt.
Yeah.
That goes back to a childhood thing.
Yeah.
And that usually comes
And
out
what do kids typically think about
the
it?
stomach ache.
What do kids typically do when they're scared of going to school,
They have
or
a stomach ache.
they don't want to face a situation with a bully? What do they complain of?
I don't
A
feel
stomach
good.
A stomach ache.
Actually, I had that from my experience.
I did too.
I was hospitalized many times because of my stomach issues, and we found out after doing tons of testing that it was really all anxiety, and then I learned about
It was
the
related
amygdala.
to something. It was related to something in the
Yes.
environment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and some.
Sorry, Rachel. I was just thinking, which kind of leads to. Sometimes there's an overuse of trauma, like we call things traumatizing that weren't necessarily traumatizing. But then there's an underuse of trauma when it's needed, like with mental and physical things, like what you're talking about right now, like especially in the medical
You might
field.
say it's like, oh, you're just being too sensitive.
So, but like in the medical field, many doctors have never been trained in any type of trauma, right?
Yeah.
They'll just kind of give you some medicine.
What
and
did you
slap
say
a
your
Band-Aid.
doctors always say?
Well, we have we do have stomach issues in our family. That's why they were concerned about
But
it.
what did they always write it off as?
Anxiety.
Yeah.
It's
So
they
which
still
is
write everything off as anxiety.
on one level it's true, but it's
Yeah.
not what you're saying.
Right.
What you're saying is what?
Right. It's getting back to the root of the issue, which is connected
Which is
more
not
to that
anxiety.
wound.
It's
That
not
we were
anxiety.
talking
That's a symptom.
Right. That's a symptom of the wound, which is connected to what we are believing about ourselves, what we're believing about our worth and our value. And the reason that we actually get triggered is because whatever you said to me or whatever happened in the moment, there's a part of me that maybe still believes it. And that's the wound for me.
Or reacts the way you used to. You regress.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
which is another problem when we get around our family of origin or people that we know well, that we grew up with, we tend to regress into childhood roles and act the way we used to act.
Right.
We would like to believe we don't, but we do to some degree until we really do a lot of work on it. But
Aware.
even when we do work on it, we tend to do that. And so mine is, I feel it in my chest. When I get stressed or I get triggered, I feel it in my chest, and I start to get loud. I start to pace. I clench my fist. I clench my jaw. And you know, all that sounds like anger, and it is anger, but anger again is not the primary emotion. It's a secondary emotion. What I'm really feeling is scared and inadequate. This is what I've learned. I'm feeling either ashamed, like I'm unworthy, I can't deal with this, I'm not enough, inadequate, I don't know what to do, or I'm just afraid, like I feel like I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, and that makes me feel like all of those feelings, because I don't like to not know what to do. I like to be in control, and I think most people
I think
do.
we all do.
Yeah, I like. Go ahead.
Attaching those sensations to feelings goes into the next step with naming the sensation. So
Yes.
for me, it's not just my stomach, it's my chest, my body starts to ache, my head starts to feel heavy, I start feeling hot, which makes me feel overwhelmed. Putting a word to that sensation can
So
help identify.
that is a feeling overwhelmed. So mine, I just named mine. I would be feeling anger and stressed and scared. That's what I would say. Because I believe you got to name it to tame it. You can't always name the feeling, but what would you name the feeling you were having, like with your stomach, or a little while ago, if it either that or what you typically would feel with that sensation?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I did have some anger. I did have some, just like a self-protective response.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be making me feel safe. We're about to go on air,
Yes.
and you were razzing me up.
You totally razzed me up.
Yeah,
I would also like to say that it's okay.
I just did that to use as an example. Sorry.
It's okay to feel
I
angry.
used you. How does
too.
that make you feel?
Not good. That is a poor choice.
For my own benefit, I used you.
Maybe not good for this exact conversation we're having.
No, it's perfect, actually.
But so the feeling made you angry.
Yes.
Is there any other feeling associated with that feeling in the stomach? There's the body sensation, then the feeling.
Yeah, just belittled, kind of words around not being important. Like kind of tapping more into that.
I don't matter,
I don't
unworthy,
matter.
or
Yeah, like what I have to say doesn't matter, or yeah, it's not as important.
or unsafe.
Unsafe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so then after you identify the body sensation and the feeling, then you try to figure out what the need is. So what were you needing before we do this?
Oh, probably more like, comfort, reassurance.
Yeah, exactly.
Encouragement.
Yeah, so when you feel that, like in public, if you imagine feeling that, getting triggered in public, what do you think the need would be associated with that? What has it been in the past?
What do you mean? Just
To feel safe?
safety.
Like when you start
yeah,
to...
just safety.
Yeah.
Just a sense of like, yeah, I'm safe.
Yeah, so mine, if I start to feel that in my chest and I'm feeling fearful and angry and I don't know inadequate, I don't know what to do, my need is I need to settle myself. I need to get settled. I need to feel settled and calm down. That's what I need.
And I'm going to use the word you told me not to use.
Go ahead.
And I'm going to say, and I need to honor myself, which means being in tune with what I'm feeling.
Now tell them
and
why I
what
told you
I'm
not to
needing.
use that feeling. Tell them why I'm not. This is part of my razzing from yesterday we
he
practiced.
told me not to use the word honor
I
yourself.
did not tell you that.
He said that you guys wouldn't understand it if I used that
Why?
term.
What did I call it?
Jargon.
Jargon. So I did this partially on purpose and partially coming from our practice session. So I said most people would not know what honoring yourself means. Do you agree or disagree?
I would say everyone has their own opinion and idea of what honoring their self means.
So
I know what honoring myself means for myself.
what would it mean? If you were having your feeling,
If I was having my feeling and I wanted to honor myself, it would be I'm going to take care of myself first and do my self-care that I need to do, but that's different for everyone.
and that was your first synonym when I pushed you for a synonym. Take care of yourself.
Take care of
Self-care.
Yes.
Self-care. So like if I needed to get settled and because I don't want to get angry and I don't want to feel inadequate. So what I would need would be some kind of self-comfort or comfort and to get myself settled and back under control. And that would be, I would go do something that I would call self-soothing or self-regulating. I would go do things like breathing or walk or get away or go lay down, things that I know to do to regulate my emotions. Because if I don't get my emotions regulated, I can't do anything. You can't talk to a person.
I had to do this morning.
Yes. So you did good. You did good.
I went and talked to Miss Janet, one of my safe people, and
Other
I walked
receptionist.
outside. Because just getting outside.
You had
really
to do
helped
that
me
to regulate yourself after what I did
regulate
to you.
myself to people.
I'm so sorry.
But hey, we made it.
No,
We're
but
here.
I honestly, I did it because I knew you could handle it,
Okay.
because I trust you, and I knew it would make a good example. I did.
Okay.
But
Okay,
look,
Lily.
it was a risk.
Yeah.
So you
big
purposely
risk.
I knew exactly
triggered
what
her.
I knew exactly what I was doing. Yes, I do. I did. I promise I did. And what would you call that? What's the name for that?
Cruel.
Narcissistic?
Yeah. Oh.
That terrible
Lord.
word. Yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God. I've been called worse.
But speaking of those techniques to kind of calm yourself down in that self-care, that kind of does go into that next question that we can go into, which is you identified your trigger, that you are triggered. What can you do?
Okay, so let's go back through the four of them, because this is the last one. So you notice your sensation in your body. It's when you're with your family, you're even thinking about being with your family. You're dealing with the stress of Christmas. Notice what's going on in your body. Ask yourself, what are you feeling? Ask yourself, what am I needing? People are not used to doing this. You can get a list of these on Google. And then, okay, what are my choices? What are my choices? What can I do? And you just listed 3 things you did.
I just wanted to notice that the very things you're asking yourself is honoring yourself
Yes.
by saying, what do I need? What am I feeling? Right?
And I believe it is. And I know what honoring myself means.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good word. I just,
And I think it's good you're mentioning that, though, because then those who are watching can start saying that for themselves. You know, and it can hold meaning. So even if they didn't know it before, they now do. And now whenever they're having a situation like this, they can say, okay, let me identify what I'm feeling. Now let me honor myself and do what I need to do.
yeah.
Well, because if you think about it, if you get to the core issue of our wound, who was it that we had to abandon in order to survive?
Yourself.
Yes.
And what do you do what's one of the typical things that people do, the most typical defense mechanisms that people have when they are trying to get away from their own feelings and they don't realize they're being traumatized as kids? What is it? Let me see if y'all know that y'all would say the same thing as me.
Just shut down?
Yeah, what's a technical term for it?
I'm not sure.
Dissociation.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So dissociation is leaving yourself.
Right.
Like you tune out. You
You disconnect from yourself.
yes. And what I call it is I call it disassociation. But if and it's perfectly normal. Like if you're having an argument with your spouse, how many of y'all tune out? Or when your mother-in-law, starts her thing, or the drunken cousin comes in, what do you do? If you can't get away, what do? You tune out.
And some people say shut down, disengage.
But a lot of times you don't realize that you disassociate. And how it might show up as an adult. Have you ever been driving along, or watching a movie, and you just realize after some time that you don't know where you are, and you don't know what just happened, you don't know what the person just said.
Yes. I tend to also call it vegging out.
Okay, so technical
autopilot.
Technical term is disassociation. So if you're living in an unsafe environment, like you can, many different things. Some people become hypervigilant or hypersensitive, but you also disassociate. And if you start disassociating as a primary way of dealing with feelings or like painful feelings or trauma, which is your brain's way of protecting your soul. It's not the best coping mechanism, but it protects you from being wounded.
Right.
Like some people, when they're being raped, they literally leave their body.
Yes.
That's a horrible trauma. But even when mom and dad are arguing, I used to disassociate. And so if you learn that as a habit, then as an adult, when you feel uncomfortable, you won't pay attention to your body. You won't pay attention to your feelings because that's the very thing you want to get away from. So you end up disassociating. Therefore, you can't identify what you feel, and you have no choice.
Right.
You see, it locks you into the cycle where you can't do anything.
And one person just said that, I wish I could disassociate in the moment instead of chest pains and heart palpitations for minor triggers. Because sometimes it is hard to feel whenever the sensations when you're getting triggered, whenever you don't know how to cope with them or adjust with them or figure out what you need to do. And so you wish to do that,
Well, like sometimes I wish I could go back into denial, or disassociate more. So the thing is, there is something you can do, and it is a technique. It's a legitimate technique. And you can actually use it. So Dawn just gave an example. She went and talked to, you walked out of the room, you got away from me, the trigger. You went and talked to Janet, who's a phenomenal person. She also works as a secretary in the office. And she is wonderful. She's just wonderful. And she went outside and then she told herself some things that she knows are true about her, that are not what I was giving her. Okay? So you can do that, but another thing you can do is like excuse yourself from the room. And if you can't, you can still do the same thing as do box breathing. Box breathing is what they teach first responders, military, police people who like literally can't get away. They're going into battle. They're going into something that is going to make them anxious. Even golfers do this, a form of this. All athletes do a form of it. They have a little ritual, and you breathe in on a count of 4, like you go 1, 2, 3, 4, breathe in, hold it, 1, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold it, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you repeat the cycle. And there are versions of that. And when you are doing that, when I go in my room and I do that, I am just focusing on my breathing. So I'm not disassociating, but by making myself breathe and focusing on my breathing, if my mind goes off, focus back on my breathing, I am starting to regulate myself.
I would like to point out another one that I learned when I was a kid. It's kind of similar. It's just square breathing. You find any square in the room.
It's a synonym.
You follow it. You breathe in as you go up, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And that's really good whenever you're in a public place. so that you can focus on something.
Yeah.
And you can focus only on that square and only on your breathing.
Which
that's my favorite
so
one.
What's good about that is it's hard to do two things at once. Even though people multitask, it's like you can do a walking meditation where you go take a walk. Actually was doing some research online. Breathing is a great technique to regulate your amygdala.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me just say this because this is important. When you're triggered and it's associated with a trauma, or it may not minor or major, but especially a major, when you're triggered or you're having a panic attack, which is what happens to some people when they're triggered, that's in essence what's happening to me. What's happening is your brain is perceiving a threat. And when your brain perceives a threat and you start to go into the fight, flight, or freeze mode, what your autonomic nervous system is doing is your hypothalamus, your pituitary, and your adrenal glands are all dumping hormones and chemicals into your autonomic nervous system, which makes you superhuman. Like God created us that way. Like if we were in a fight, or we were in danger, or someone got trapped under a rock, we would need extra strength and adrenaline to be able to survive it. Okay? Even the freeze, you'll see an animal caught by a lion. What do? They freeze.
Yeah, play dead.
And you know what the lions sometimes will do? They will not kill them. They'll drag them back to the den and then go off to get the cubs. And then the gazelle snaps back to consciousness and runs away. So sometimes the freeze will keep you alive long enough to be able to get away. And of course, running away is a legitimate way of getting away from danger. So you can see how like it's helpful to a degree, but if you're in a family gathering, you don't want to fight, freeze, or flee. Not like out of control. You want to recognize that's what you're doing. And ironically, Lamaze training and belly breathing, a neuropsychologist friend taught me this. If you can get your diaphragm to move down 1 inch for just a few minutes, it'll shut off the autonomic nervous system.
Wow.
So you do that by you hold your chest still and you breathe in. I'm going to just demonstrate it. My chest is not going to move. When most people breathe, first of all, most people don't breathe.
No.
They take shallow breaths.
That's true.
Okay,
That's true.
or they, which is what an anxiety attack is, or they breathe out in their chest. They go. So belly breathing is keep your chest still and breathe out of your belly. Watch my belly. So if you do that, but you do it slower and more deliberate, it moves your diaphragm down 1 inch. And if you can do it 6 or 7 times, slowly, 6 count in, hold it 3 counts, 6 count out, hold it 3 counts, 6 count in, about 7 times, your diaphragm will move down 1 inch. And it will shut the autonomic nervous system off. But you would have to get away from your family to do this. So you would have to like excuse yourself. Like make up an excuse.
I'm going to do this right now
Go
in front
ahead.
of everyone. No, I'm kidding. One of the ways I understand that too is in terms of like traffic lights. Like in your green light, you're in your grounded space.
Good.
Right? But then
Like
the
that.
yellow light is your fight or flight.
Caution.
Right? You're more like
You can
you're,
feel
you're
yourself.
bigger
You can
because you're
feel
gonna
yourself
fight.
starting to.
Yeah, you're getting elevated. You're kind of like in that space, and then the freeze is your red light, right? It's where you almost like get smaller. In a freeze state, you're more in a shame space, in a smaller place, like a more depressed place.
You go inside.
Inside, right. So it's like what you're talking about is kind of what you can do when you recognize where you are. Like in your freeze state, there might be small things that you can do to get out of that, right? Like really, really small, because at that point you're really locked up. So, you know, things like go take a hot bath or drink a cold glass of water, like really, really small things. And then when you're in that fight or flight place, right, you might have a little bit more leeway or choice of what you can do.
Can
to
you
pull
think
out
of
that.
something? Can you think of something? Because I'm thinking of something. I want to see what you're thinking.
What?
If you, let's just say you're in holiday mode, you're
Mm-hmm.
shopping, preparing your home for people to come over, or people are over, you went over to someone's house and there's triggers. Your triggers are getting activated and you go in, let's just say you're someone that typically goes into fight mode. What
That's me.
would you recommend that they do? I know what you're going to say.
What?
I'm not going to tell you.
What?
I'm not going to tell you. You tell me. Honor yourself and say your own feel. I'm not going to tell you what you feel or what to say. I'm going to let you do it for yourself.
Well, I kind of missed where you're going.
No, if you found yourself going into yellow,
Yeah.
okay, or going into the fight response,
Mm-hmm.
having been triggered and your autonomic nervous system is doing what it's supposed to do,
Mm-hmm.
what would you do to help regulate yourself? Fight mode.
Okay.
Going in, starting to get into fight mode.
Okay. So I would,
What would you
probably
do?
remove myself.
From the room.
Yes.
That would, okay, so let's just be specific. You remove yourself from whoever,
From
you did
the
that.
threats.
Okay, that's what you did. No, but that's what you did with me. You
Uh-huh.
removed yourself.
Right, to get myself in a safe place where I can get back in the green.
But this is not obvious. Sometimes people don't know they can actually remove themselves from a room.
Oh, yeah.
And that
You
actually,
definitely-
They
have
stay
the
there and they
option.
argue. They get
Yes.
sucked into an argument or they say something they shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're off to the
and I do feel like
triggering someone else.
I feel like that example kind of leads into a situation that we had gotten sent
Okay.
to us. Someone had sent in with some issues. Adult kids had found out that their dad and the mom are going to separate. The mom feels like she always is afraid and has to pretend that everything is normal because that's what she always did growing up. And being and feeling that way triggers her. But she feels like she has no voice and has to pretend and calm down, which kind of goes to the not everyone knows that they can just leave the room.
Right.
You know, she kind of just wondering, since it's always triggering her,
Mm-hmm.
how is it some way that she can believe that it's okay to feel that it's not okay, if that makes sense.
You go first.
Okay.
Now, let's picture this Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
She's
holiday.
always she has a problem with depression. Kids just found out. Husband, what?
Her husband and her are going to separate. They have some financial issues.
And everybody in the family knows.
But we'll just act normal.
They'll all be
Accept her.
pretending that everything's fine, not talking about it, which is what a lot of families do.
Mm-hmm.
What can she do to honor herself?
She can honor herself.
But what can she, let's think of some things she could do. Again, I want you to think of this, and then I'm going to kind of tell you my take on it.
Well, first of all, I'm just wanting to almost remind her that she is the adult. Like, she's the mother, and she can maybe do something different in terms of what we've always
Like
done.
anything different.
Anything different, but just more like be more honest, or like actually talk about what's happening, or talk about your feelings, and give your kids another option as opposed to not talking about what's actually happening.
So she could have that conversation with her kids, which might be safer than having it with adults.
Yeah.
So I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking of another one is if you feel like you got to be in this situation at any time, you could say, excuse me, y'all, I'm just not feeling well, which is the truth. I don't like making up excuses that are not truthful. and this is not an excuse, I'm not feeling well, and then go in the room and maybe do some breathing or call a friend or pray or go wash your face or just take a break or go walk outside, go walk around the block, say, you know what, I have to bring something to a friend's house. You know, I promised to bring them a pie. You'd have to set that up ahead of time. but you could actually come up with like 5 or 6 things you could do to take a break from the situation if you feel like you can't say anything to your family.
Have a plan. Have
Yes.
multiple plans. Set them out. Think of them beforehand. Come up with the situations of, if this happens, how will I navigate this? If this happens, how will I navigate this?
And I want to just say too that I when I was Googling the God of Internet this morning, and I want to show you something. So I searched trauma, okay, and you can see that it will come up with trauma, and then there's all these answers, like there's all these questions. What are 3 types of trauma? And like 25 questions appeared. And I never really thought of this, but where did these answers come from? Are they like Google guys, these intellectual guys that answer these questions? And they're not, because what happens is Google has a sophisticated search engine, so they search everything that's published, and they get, I guess some people decide on the best answer, and they make it very succinct, and they list the article that comes from and then the website. So on these 30 questions that I Googled, I now have 30 articles with 30 different websites that are dealing with this one issue. And so it asks, what are 3 types of trauma? And this applies to the woman we're talking about. And to me, and to Dawn, and to you as well. So there's acute trauma which results from a single incident. Single incident that happened one Christmas. Okay? Someone got drunk and made a scene. Or mother and daughter-in-law got in a fight. One incident. Okay? Then there's a second type of trauma. Chronic trauma is repeated and prolonged, such as domestic violence or abuse. That would be like a toxic environment, in my opinion, that you got to deal with, which is what you sound like you're dealing with. People that don't do feelings, are not aware of needs, their emotional IQ is low. And so it's not safe to share how you feel, which puts you in a bind. And the third type would be complex trauma. Also, complex trauma and grief and loss. There's actually something called complex grief. And let me just say, while we're on the topic, grief and loss is traumatic. So a lot of people are going to be dealing with that this Christmas, and we could spend some time talking about it. But complex trauma is exposure to varied and multiple traumatic events, often of an invasive or interpersonal nature. So what I would say is this woman's depression is the result of childhood trauma. She didn't have a voice. Her voice wasn't honored. She never learned to set boundaries. Her boundaries were violated, carried into adulthood. Now they're gotten to a point where they're causing marital distress, trauma. Her children are being traumatized. That's traumatizing her as well. And then everybody pretending that things are okay are just traumatizing. So how many traumas is that? It's multiple traumas.
Complex.
And then it's going to involve maybe a separation and money struggles, and they're not going to be able to associate with the same people anymore, and maybe her income is going to be compromised. So how do you deal with all those things this Christmas? I have no idea.
It's not an easy answer.
It's not. No, it's not an easy fix.
Or yeah.
But here's the thing. Who are you responsible for?
I like also thinking of it as what is your circle of control.
Okay.
The whole circle of control,
Right.
well, I wish I had a photo of it, but it's a huge circle with different other circles outside of it. So there's you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you can control.
Right.
And you can control what you do and what you feel. And then it gets more outside. What other people do, what other people feel, actions of other people. You can't control any of it.
Right.
So whenever you're in a situation like that, you just think, what's my circle of control? Me. What I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. And as a people pleaser, that's really hard to do because you want to do all the outside stuff. I know that I can relate to that.
Right.
I want to get out of my circle of control. But it's something that's really good to remember is what are you in control of in times like that.
Well, and just to speak to this mama, as a mama, you matter, right? Like, getting curious about what's coming up inside of you and kind of how we've gotten to where we are, where we aren't able to have boundaries, right? Or we aren't able to say what we're thinking or say what we're feeling, like, get curious about that and go back and kind of see the root of that, kind of where that started for you, because it's showing up today, right? In our present circumstances, in our present relationships. But if you peel it back and you peel it back and you peel it back, right? The relationship that's really suffering and hurting is our relationship with ourself as a result of the trauma, right? The wound, that sense of I don't matter, I'm not important, right? I'm not worth it, I'm not worth anything, right? When we get back to the core of the issue, and that's where I would say, take that journey for yourself. Like, get to know yourself. It's never too late to take that journey and to really learn how to love who you are. Like, love your little girl.
And I would say, to anybody that's got complex trauma or complex grief, you should seek help from someone that works with this. I mean, I know all three of us have gotten a lot of therapy. I've gotten somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 hours worth of individual therapy. Plus I've gone and done intensives with people, probably 7 of them. And there's a lot, like Dawn has a number of techniques that she uses to help people with trauma. I use certain techniques. The other counselors have different techniques, and there has been so much study and new techniques developed due to the brain research and something called neuroplasticity, which means that the brain is capable of changing even when it's old. Like, in an example of that is a traumatic brain injury. Even the worst. I had a jockey one time that got knocked off his horse, and he couldn't put words together for almost a year. But then he started making progress, and little by little, it took about 2 years before he was about 95%. Or you take someone who's been on drugs, for a long time. It's going to take their brain time to heal. A stroke. I know someone who had a stroke 14 months ago. Well, she's gotten back the use of her left side, but she's still got further to go. And the same is true with an emotional wound. And so when Dawn says start your journey doesn't necessarily start in therapy, but therapy can be a part of your journey.
Yes.
There's a lot of things you can do.
Well, and if you think about it, what the essence of trauma, right, is disconnect from yourself. And so in order to survive, a lot of us had to abandon ourselves, which leads to fragmented self, right? So we're kind of very disconnected, and whole, like healing, the journey to healing is the journey to wholeness, which is that process of really turning towards yourself and bringing those parts of you back together, like
embracing the bad as
embracing
well as the
whole
good, as well as the
story.
good, all of it.
The whole story and its impact on you throughout your entire life. And so, like in that situation, it's kind of recognizing what's coming up for me right now, and whatever that, perhaps that wound is, or that little girl that's being kind of triggered in the moment, is the little girl that needs the attention at the moment. As far as, you know, what did that little girl need that she didn't get back there? Just to be seen and known and loved and cared for. And the cool thing about the way God has designed us to heal is we are actually a vital part of our own healing, because we're reconnecting with our younger self, our wounded self that we had to abandon in order to survive. And so it's that gentle turn towards ourself to say, hey, you matter. Hey, I see your pain and that matters to me, you know, and giving them the time, the effort, the energy, because if you remember what the wounds are that you're not worth it.
So I'm just thinking of this lady. So there may not be a whole lot she can do to change the situation, but even what you're saying, and I know it's true, I know it's true because I've experienced it.
Yeah.
Even if first of all, she wrote in, so she's acknowledging it, she's not denying it.
Right.
But even when she's in the situation this Christmas, she can notice her own pain. Everybody else may pretend it's not there.
Validate it.
She can notice it, and she can, in essence, honor it.
Yes.
She can say, I'm not crazy. In this case, everybody else really is the ones that are crazy, except maybe my kids, and I'm not going to let them turn out crazy. I'm going to get stronger, and start saying, I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to figure out a way through this so that my kids don't repeat the same pattern. And that can give you some motivation.
Right. And
I'm not going to let my kids end up like this. Because the thing is, if you don't, it begins with connecting with yourself, which is why I get people to do a genogram and a timeline and embrace and process all that. Because if you're disconnected from yourself, forget connecting with another human being or connecting with God. You have to connect with yourself to be able to connect with God. When David wrote in Psalm 51, he said, this was after he committed the sin with Bathsheba, he says, thou dost desire truth in the innermost parts. In other words, you have to tell the truth to yourself about what you're experiencing before you can even truly connect to God. Otherwise, you're seeing God through a lens of your mother and father, whoever your caretakers are, and God is not your mother and father. That explains why people think God's is mad at them or wants to punish them, because that's what they experienced growing up.
Right.
And then this all happens so early, you don't even realize that's what it is. And then how do you connect with another person if you're not connected with yourself? You can't. How can you even fully receive love if you're not connected with yourself? You can't.
Which honestly, I think that gets back to the core issue, right? Is the disconnection from yourself. And I feel like in our culture and even in the church, they do a lot to actually separate you from yourself and not like yourself.
Not
yourself.
knowingly, not on
it's
purpose.
Built into the theology.
Yes.
A lot of it. And
Some of it can be misinterpreted.
Right. So there are times where our theology can actually drive us further from ourselves, where we're kind of swimming upstream to take this journey.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of that in churches.
Yes. And it can be
wounds
true.
from that.
It can be true. So permit me just to digress one more time. Okay, so like there's this great Bible story, and it's not a story that's typically taught at Christmas, but to me it's one of my favorite ones to teach at Christmas. It's one of Martha and Mary, where Jesus goes, like Jesus is really good friends with Lazarus, who's a rich guy, and he's got two sisters, Martha and Mary. And he goes there, and of course, the women, women do what women, not
Oh,
you,
Lord.
because you
you
because you honor yourself. You
Or
got
me.
this mastered, and y'all are both really healthy, and y'all don't do this, okay? But sometimes the men do it too. Sometimes, we all do it. It's not just a female thing. But so the story goes that Jesus went in there, and there was a bunch of people in there, and Martha was busy in the kitchen getting all the things ready, to eat for the people, because someone's got to serve. And that's what they teach us to do in church. Serve, know God, find out what your gifts are and use them to serve other people. Make a difference, okay? So Martha's in there, she's serving God. I mean, she's literally serving God in the flesh. And while she's doing this, she's saying, where's my sister? Like, she's got helpers, but where's my sister? And she goes out and looks, and she's plopped right at the feet of Jesus. And she looks, and she said, I'm doing all this bonus stuff. So she says, Mary, Mary, can't get her attention. And then she says she can't get her attention. So she says to Jesus, can you tell Mary to come and help me? Because I'm doing all the preparations alone. Tell Mary to come help me. And what does Jesus say? He says, Martha, Martha, dear Martha Stewart, you're worried and bothered by so many things, but really only a few things are necessary, really just one. Mary has chosen the best part, and it will not be taken away from her. Dudley's interpretation. This Christmas, really, there's only a few things that are necessary. You're worried and bothered by so many things. How people are going to react, about gifts, about how your house is going to look, about, she's not, Martha could just put the figs in a bowl. But no, she's got to put them on a platter and drizzle icing and make it in the form of a Christmas tree. Like, okay, well, she had time and the money and the people to help her do that, great. But it's keeping her from the good part. Jesus is saying, Mary chose the good part, which is out here with us, being with him. Not doing anything. Being. She's just being. Herself, connected to herself, and she knows the best part is being there with people, specifically with Jesus. Not serving Jesus,
Safe people.
being with Jesus.
And
So-
save people when you're done.
Yeah, I know. So I just wanted to finish. So those words, when he says you're worried and bothered by so many things, the word worried means preoccupied to the point of obsession, and bothered. But you're worried and bothered. Bothered means encumbered. It means you've got so much on you can't move. It'd be like the little kid in that Christmas story. I don't know what it is about the guy wants to buy the little gun. They dress one of the little kids up in so many clothes, he can't move his arms. He can't move. He's so encumbered. He's got so much on him, he can't move.
Right.
So he says, you're worried and bothered by so many things. Really only a few things are necessary. Figure out what they are. And really there's only one. That's you. Ultimately, you and Jesus. Like, I think Christmas is about Jesus. But it's not about the cross, it's about the birth. It's about Emmanuel, God with us, coming into the world so that we could have life. Yes? But what does Christmas look like? It's about
Well,
everything else. Not being, not relationship, not calm, settled.
and I would just say, I think that's a good point because a lot of us aren't living. We're existing. Right? Because I think what we're kind of talking about is we've kind of learned how to live in this autopilot mode, freeze mode for a lot of us, just stay in a
Or
freeze.
keeping up with the Joneses,
Right.
stressing ourselves unnecessarily,
Sure.
taking on other people's expectations.
Right. But without being connected to ourselves. Without.
Well, how can you be?
Well, there's
when
a
you're
lot
doing
going
all-
against us.
How can you be when you have a culture that makes Christmas be about everything else?
I think it takes a lot of effort, and it's a lifelong process. I don't think anyone will ever figure out how to fully live in their entire life. But you can have moments of good and happiness with working on yourself. But working and helping yourself is very tiring in the society we live in.
It can be. That's why God made sleep.
Yes, but you know, it's good to have those skills and the breathing, and but also what goes into the next one is safe people. It's good to have those safe people so they can help balance you out. And it's not like that other person's a responsibility, but it's just someone you can trust, someone you can talk to, and they will talk more into what a safe person kind of is and traits of them. But with today's society, it's really important to have just the basics so that you can have times and days of peace with
So-
working on those
I want to say something. I want you to answer it. Okay.
Okay.
So I just want to add to what she said, but I want you to answer it.
Mhm.
So to say there are such things as safe people, you went to one of your safe people, that means there are unsafe people.
Yes.
Either because they don't respect your boundaries, either because they talk over you, they interrupt you constantly.
They tell you what you think.
They
and
tell
feel.
so they make you feel bad.
Right. But
Okay.
they're not vulnerable. Not,
So
um,
what would you say to what the question is, how do you know whether someone's safe, and how do we apply this to coming up with the holidays?
well, I kind of wanted to get back to the one situation, the importance of not being isolated, right? Which is why we're talking about finding your safe people. So don't do it alone. Don't stay isolated because we can't heal in isolation. So, but it is important that we do find the safe people, and the safe people are the ones that listen. You know, they're genuinely interested in you. They also have some self-awareness about themselves. They're willing to look at themselves. They have a sense of vulnerability.
They have your best interests at heart.
Yes, they have your best interest in mind, you know, and they're accessible to you.
So I'm just thinking that, so the lady, there's got to be at least one or two safe people in her life. They may not be in the people she's going to be spending Christmas with, but that might look like a text an hour, like how are you doing? Or just want to let you know I made it through another hour.
Yeah.
If you can't call, or a call 2 or 3 times during the period of time that's going to be the hardest.
I would say in this culture, our temptation is to isolate. It's to, you know, it's to remove
It's what people
ourselves,
do when they're
withdraw.
afraid and when they feel ashamed and
Anxiety.
inadequate.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's almost like push against that and reach out and let another safe human be with you.
And I would also like to just mention, even just from my own personal experiences and thoughts, is a lot of times in today's society and feel, especially if you're a people pleaser, you sometimes feel like a burden trying to talk to someone or get that support.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that if they are your safe person, you are not a burden to them. And that's something I tell myself every single day, because I still think those thoughts, you know?
Yeah.
Like my mom is my safe person, but sometimes I just feel like a burden. If she's having a bad day and I need to just be like, I'm having a rough day, you know? But it's also important to remember a safe person also has their own boundaries.
Yep.
So it's that y'all respect each other's boundaries.
Right.
They respect yours, you respect theirs.
To me, it's like part of it is reciprocal. It feels reciprocal. Like a reciprocal relationship is where there's give and take. You talk, they listen. They talk, you listen. It's not all one person
Not
talking.
a one-sided relationship.
Yes, or it's you help when they're needy. They help when you're needy. You're strong when they need a shoulder, and they're strong when you need a shoulder. Like, you take turns, but it's natural. It's not out of obligation. It's because you genuinely care about that other person. And to me, like, so if you're in a situation like this lady, or you're dealing with a Christmas, let's deal with the issue of dealing with a Christmas. Let's say you went through a divorce, someone died, you have a drug addict or an alcoholic in the family, and that person, okay, so first of all, you're going to have a person that's not going to be there this Christmas, okay, and so you're grieving, or you went through a divorce, or you lost a child, or someone's going to be missing because of it's created a trauma. Let's deal with that first. And let's combine the issue of boundaries and safe people. So this is what I would say. It depends. So what do you do? It depends to some degree on whether or not the people that are going to be with you celebrating Christmas are open and capable of talking about feelings and such, to some degree.
Okay.
But like, things that I've recommended is, number one, you could, like, not try to ignore it, put an empty chair at the table and maybe share some good memories, but then have some activities planned where you do something that you wouldn't normally do. Like, go somewhere, like, get out of the house, go look at lights, or go to a restaurant. We got Thanksgiving from Piccadilly, so it wouldn't be so
Like,
weird. It was just a totally different thing.
And I was gonna say, some of those tips could apply to a question we just got
Okay,
in the
go
chat.
ahead. Yeah.
Someone had just sent in the chat, some people really don't have a whole lot of choice about being alone for the holidays. I live alone, I don't love myself, my family really doesn't want me with them for Christmas, and I suffer from deep depression. So that makes the holidays tough for me. Every year I feel like I have to wing it. I really like to know what I can do to get through the holidays in a more joyful way.
Does she have a dog or an animal?
It says, well, the next comment was, I feel like I'm a bird 90% of the time, so I isolate away from people so I don't have to become a burden. No mentions on any
Pets. Okay. All right. So there's a lot of people that fall into this category. Michelle and I were alone for Thanksgiving. We have a special needs daughter, 37 years old, autistic, mood disorder, and moderately to severely mentally handicapped. She can't be around anybody, so we can't be around our family. And so we were alone. And there's some things happening that made that even difficult. And then our grandchildren and our oldest daughter are in Ireland. Okay, so we're alone, and we couldn't go to Baton Rouge to be with my sister and some of the family. It's somewhat fragmented right now because my mom and dad are both deceased. So it's sad for me every Thanksgiving. I dread it. I want to just erase Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from the schedule. And or just go to sleep, be put in a coma for those 4 days. But what I would say is, there are people that I can call and touch base with. There are people that I can go to lunch with. We have a dog who's a lovable little dog, and it's not a person, but dogs love you unconditionally. Cats, depends on the cat.
She did mention she has no pets.
Okay. Maybe she could borrow one. Rent one that's fully trained. But I think that we were made, we were not made to be alone. So I think we need a community. You can't create a community you can't pop one out of a gumball machine. They don't even have gumball machines anymore. But you can't just presto and there's a healing community. But as I said, all of these questions that I asked Google, they have websites and articles. So there are people that are in your position where I know offer like a chat room. Now you gotta be careful when you're on the internet because you can end up somewhere that you don't want to be. But there are reputable people out there, like Focus on the Family is a reputable organization. And, there are also dinners that some people do for people that are alone on the holidays. AA and NA have gatherings specifically on the holidays for people that are alone and struggling with addiction so they don't relapse.
Some church communities too.
Church communities.
If you're involved.
And you don't have to go to church. A lot of churches have what they call life groups or small groups. And to me, a small group is the next best thing to a family. But you've got to find the right small group. I'm an introvert. I don't like groups with people that I don't know. I can go to them. I've learned how to relate to people in all kinds of situations. But a small group would be the next best thing to having a family. But it may take doing some of what Dawn is laid out to get to the point where you could even be in a group, which might take investing in a therapist and trying to connect with yourself, learn to love yourself, and then take a small step, like maybe join a book club, where you all read the same book, where it's not heavy duty sharing and slow process, a journey toward not being alone. And another thing, I know it sounds trite, but if you go to a restaurant, particularly if you go to a bookstore with a coffee shop, go and sit in the coffee shop, get a book, and read it in the coffee shop, get a coffee and a treat, and there will be other people coming in and out of the bookstore and you will feel less alone.
That's true. What would you say?
So, well, I'm just saying, kind of what you're hitting on, Dudley, is doing maybe the opposite of what you feel. Because if we just kind of live out of our feelings, we will stay isolated, we will stay withdrawn. And so sometimes just doing an opposite action, right? Like get out of the house, like you're saying right now. Go for a walk. Like, I don't feel like going for a walk right now. Nothing in me feels like that. But we don't have to be loyal to our feelings, right? We can be loyal to the truth. We can be loyal to, just fighting for ourselves. And so it's just a little bit, we need a little push sometimes, not to necessarily just doing what we feel like doing, but doing what is best for us,
And I have gone to a restaurant by myself many times.
Me too.
Okay? Especially like if my wife and I were in a fight, and I've been married 40 years. We've had some stuff. We're still together, but I mean, so like I've gone out and not just gone to get something to eat, but gone to my favorite place and got my favorite dish and sat down and talked to the guy that was cooking the dish, or sat at the there's some places like Greek food is some of my favorite. And there's one place where, like, I love talking to the guy's son. I love talking to the guy knows me by name. So even though it's not family, just doing that gives your brain actually releases oxytocin and a little bit of endorphins and dopamine. And it gives you a little boost, just like exercise.
Yeah.
It's exercising your soul.
Yeah. And I would say anybody that's watching that, has a family intact and is not going to be lonely this year, be mindful of your friends and people that are, and maybe even invite them in.
I think that would be what Jesus would want us to do.
I think that's what Jesus would do.
Yeah.
That's what he did.
Yeah, and not expect anything. Not expect anything. Let them be however they are,
Yeah.
And that's the kind of people that I want to be around the holidays, where I can be however I am. I don't want to have to be different than I am just to appease.
And some, we can go over just some final coping skills, some things that we can maybe use, that everyone can use during just the holiday season to get through the next month.
I wanted to finish the grief thing. So
Yes.
you can either make it part of your Christmas, if you feel like you can, if you can make it part of your Christmas and then do something else, but have something else planned. Don't just let everybody, pig out, fall into a coma in front of the TV, and the same people clean up. Have a board game, make everybody play. Have some type of Trivial Pursuit, make everybody play. Have a white elephant party, or do something different. But include the grief, the loss of the person, and don't try to deny it. The other thing you can do is, if you've been dealing with this for a while and you just don't want to feel the sadness, distraction is a perfectly acceptable means of dealing with trauma. Not permanent distraction, but do something to get your mind off of that person. And again, you could go to a restaurant. You could have the food catered in. You could go to a house that you've never been to before. You could celebrate Christmas in a location that you've never been to before. And do something that you've never done on Christmas before. Do a new tradition. And you'd be amazed. Like, take some furniture out of your house, repaint your wall. And of course, that'll probably cause trauma, just trying to figure out how to do that. If you just change the environment. I read a book that says changing an environment, the colors and the aesthetics in the environment can significantly change your mood.
It does, yes.
Even with serious grief and trauma.
Yeah, so, just don't be afraid to do something different. Don't be afraid to be the person that actually starts a different tradition or starts talking about what nobody else in the room will talk about, right? Or be the person that says, I'm feeling anxious today. Because you'll be surprised. Everybody in that room is feeling something, right? You might actually experience someone that's like, oh man, me too. And so it's kind of like, don't just settle for what you've always done or the way you've always thought or the way you've always, just kind of maybe slid into the room on the bottom. Like, realize you have worth, you have value, you belong in that room, and you can actually be the person that changes a whole family system. Really, it takes one person to change a whole family system.
All right, and if you don't think that's possible, then plan to only be there for a short period of time and come up with some legitimate reasons that you can't stay for a long period of time. And don't try to confront a family member that you see 3 times a year. Bad idea. If you see someone every day, the rule of thumb is you only confront people about serious feelings if they are safe and they can respond.
Yeah.
If they're going to react or they're not going to be able to hear it, then don't say it to them. Unless there's someone that lives with you every day, then you're going to have to deal with it and you're going to have to create a crisis. But if you're seeing someone like only on the holidays, your goal is to get through the holidays with yourself intact and don't create another traumatic experience by trying to do the same thing over again to someone who can't hear you and can't validate you. Say it to a safe person. Don't say it to them. Avoid them. If you don't really like someone that you're going to be with, this is my idea. Right when you come in, go say hello to them. We were talking about this. Dawn doesn't exactly agree with me, but go say hello to them, shake their hand, or hug them, and do whatever you feel comfortable with. And then spend time talking to other people that you do feel comfortable with, and just avoid the people that you don't feel comfortable with. Just because they're your family doesn't mean they're your friends or that you have to like them. Jesus said you have to love people. He didn't say you have to like them. Okay, and a lot of times the people in our family we don't like, we force together on the holidays. And that's what brings us together. And so that's why I just said what I said.
Miss Dawn, what about you? What are some final touches on getting through the holiday season?
Yeah, I would just say, be mindful, be aware of kind of where you are. It's totally normal for our body to be responding during the holidays because, like I said, the body remembers everything. And just as that's happening to you, that's happening to other people in the room too, right? You have your own set of wounds that you can kind of be aware of and get curious about. And so does the person next to you, right? They have their own set. And sometimes they might get triggered up and, be kind of acting a fool. And we have to kind of see that as that's on them, right? If we're not careful and we have our wounds that are unhealed and that trigger taps into something with us, and then all of a sudden we're triggered too.
Yeah, I was going to say, some people could help that person regulate, but some
Yeah.
people can't.
Right.
And you got to know which it is. That's more like the discernment factor.
Yeah, and the boundaries, right? So I would just say be really gentle with yourself. Holidays can be really hard. They can also be really fun
Don't be a
and
Martha.
stressful.
Don't be a Martha.
And honor yourself. I'm
Yes,
saying that
honor
for you.
yourself. I
Honor
think that's the
yourself.
big takeaway.
You can say that now.
Okay,
I really
thank
like that, and that's one of the things I like most about you.
Okay, well, thank you.
I really do.
But let yourself feel all of your emotions, all of your feelings. You're like, we've got grief, loss, we've got loss of relationships, we've got loss of
What's
our
the remedy
loved
for
ones.
grief? To grieve.
To grieve.
You can't not grieve, but you
feel
can
it.
grieve in chunks. You don't have to grieve 24 hours a day. You can grieve for a little while, go write it down, journal, talk to a friend, then forget about it and go distract yourself or go focus on something else. That's what I tell people. It might hit you like a wave, but then you can get away from it. You don't have to do it all the time.
Right. And honestly, the only way to get through it is to feel it, right? You got to go through it. You got to feel it. Like for me, this time of year, 1 minute I'm bouncing off the walls because I'm excited because we're planning a family trip right now. And the
Can I
next
come?
minute, I'm crying on the bathroom floor.
Can I
You know?
come? Can I
It's
come
like-
on the show?
No.
I promise I won't interrupt and I won't belittle you.
So that's what I'm saying. Like I said, 1 minute I'm really happy, excited. The next minute I'm crying, and all of that is allowed. You
And
have
it's
permission
okay.
to feel all of that. It's okay. It's very human. And the way to actually heal is to let yourself feel it. It won't
Yeah.
last forever, but that's how you honor yourself.
Yeah,
And that's part of what got shut down in us as a kid,
yeah.
right?
So maybe this is a Christmas you begin your journey. It's not going to go perfect. Whenever you start doing something, you're going to make mistakes. But I wanted to take the time to thank you very much. Like, I trust Dawn. I send all kinds of people to Dawn. She's an incredible therapist. Will be an incredible, already is a incredible therapist, could be a therapist, working towards credentials, and just so blessed to have you here. Thank you so much for moderating this. And, if you need help, we got plenty of counselors here, and some of us are going to be taking time off, and some of us are going to be working through the holidays. And so it just depends. But, start your journey. Don't let another year pass without. If you've identified with problems in any of these areas, let this be the time where you draw a line in the sand and it's not a New Year's resolution. Draw a line in the sand right now and say, no more. Something is going to change. Even if it's a little thing, I'm going to do something different this year.
And I'd like to say that little steps. It's all small little steps. We as humans, we want to do everything at once.
Yep.
But just remember, healing is a lifelong process.
Yep.
Give yourself grace. It's going to be small steps after another, and start now, and,
Yeah, you might want your family to all get along and get together. They just may not be able to do that. Okay, so you can't keep trying to make it happen if it doesn't happen. You need to accept. Part of grief is like grieving that it can't happen, and going through, the shock, the bargaining, the anger, the sadness, but getting to acceptance. Like I've had to accept, and it comes up for me every year, I have to accept we're not going to have a normal Christmas or Thanksgiving like other people ever. In heaven, maybe, but not here. It's just never going to be normal. And that's hard. I've been feeling that for 37 years. But if you don't accept it, you'll keep just like bumping your head up against a wall and keep injuring yourself. You have to accept what you cannot change. Say the Serenity Prayer over and over. It's a practical guide to that circle that you you deal with you, and what you can't change, like either avoid it, figure out a plan to deal with it, or if it triggers you, learn how to regulate yourself. That would be my closing remarks.
And regardless of what you've been through, it does not have to define you, right? It doesn't have
It doesn't.
It doesn't define you.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to dictate the rest of your life, you know?
Yeah.
You matter. You're important. Your pain matters. Your story matters. And your healing matters. And you're worth whatever that takes for you to heal. And so,
No matter
Do
what
it.
anybody else thinks.
regardless of what anybody else
It's all what you think.
All right. Thank
All right.
y'all.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you
this,
for all of your questions, and we're
yes.
going to post this
Yes, we're gonna be posting
with
this.
all the
whole-
commentary and some notes and
Yes.
an article that I found that's really good.
Yes, we'll be posting it on the event as well as the regular BCS page. So y'all will be able to watch it as often as y'all would like. Watch any parts. It'll be the full thing. So if there was only one section y'all liked or wanted to really listen to again, just fast forward over to that.
And I'm going to start doing this on a regular basis. I don't know how often, and certainly I might do some with Dawn or some of the other counselors, but this is going to be something that we continue doing if people like it, and hopefully people did. I liked it. Thank you, Ray.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.